All right, we are back with the lineup podcast for 2024. I'm Dave Prodan, and I am honored to be rejoined by my part-time co-host from last season. It went so well. We get to have him back this year, the Mitchell Salazar. And Mitch, just like that, the 2024 WSL Championship Tour season is upon us once again. First things first, though, how was your holiday break? What did you get up to? Did you just stay in Southern California? Did you travel? Did you get some waves? What was it like?
Well, Dave, happy holidays and happy new year to you as well. Actually didn't really travel that much, which was nice. It was refreshing because I had a real busy back end of the year. I was supposed to go back home to Mexico. Wasn't able to make that happen because, as you know, we just had a major event happen in San Diego over the course of the last week, and talking about the Samazon World Junior Championships hosted by Best Western. Talent is unbelievable in the junior rankings, Dave. And just as you know, it's been a huge breakthrough since it first started in 1998. And now in 2024, the level has really risen. And I think we're going to see a lot of these young surfers that competed at this event last week on the championship tour within the next 2 or 3 years.
I love that you brought that up because you were obviously on the ground commentating for the Samazon World Junior Championships hosted by Best Western. It was at Oceanside this year. The WJCs has been one of my favorite events since even before I worked at the ASP. It's an event that it's always styled itself correctly, in my opinion, as the most prestigious junior event on the planet. And the past winners list bears that out. Like, it's a laundry list of men and women who have made a real impact on the sport. You've got Andy Irons, Joel Parkinson, Jesse Miley Dyer, Adriano D'Souza, Sally Fitzgibbons, Jordy Smith, Laura Enever, Gabriel Medina, Ethan Ewing, Isabella Nichols, and on and on and on. And this year's winners, Sierra Kerr and Jet Schilling, very worthy additions to that prestigious list. But being on the ground there, Mitch, what are some of your field notes? What did you notice about this up-and-coming crop of global junior surfers? What did you see that maybe we didn't see through the broadcast?
Well, I think first thing that stood out the most is that I would say around half of these surfers were on the Challenger Series last year, which goes to show you that a lot of the people that are qualifying through the regions, or as Jarvis Earl did last year through his breakthrough win at Seaside Reef, winning the World Junior Championship right there, is that he earned himself a spot onto the Challenger Series for 2023. He wasn't able to do so in 24 right here, but I mean, that just goes to show you that the small level that we have on the Challenger Series, which is obviously very huge when it comes to competitiveness, is very young. And this youth has not only gotten on to the championship tour last year with Kata Madsen, who was in the event in 2023 over at Seaside Reef. Eli Hanneman was a semifinalist. And of course, have to give major props to one kid that I thought surfed great throughout the entire event, Levi Slauson, who is a former runner-up and who's a former Challenger Series surfer too. So to me, first things first, Jet Schilling getting his first breakthrough win. The one guy out of that friend group that didn't qualify for the CT last year is 15th on the Challenger Series. Everybody thinks that he has what it takes to make it to the CT, and I feel like he does too. Maybe one of the smaller ones, but if you look at what Griffin Colapinto's done over his 6 years on the championship tour, he's not a very big guy either. So I feel like after a good start at the Lexus Pipe Pro presented by YETI, these are some of the surfers that we could potentially be seeing in the top 15 or even in the top 10 at the end of the season.
It's a good point you bring up, and with Jet in particular, you mentioned so many of these surfers competing at the World Junior Championships this year. Many of them had runs on the Challenger Series last season, and that is obviously, in addition to being added to that prestigious list of past winners, a huge carrot for the finalists is if they haven't qualified for that CS level through their own regional qualifying series, making the finals at the World Junior Championships bumps them straight to the Challenger Series, and that is a huge advantage to them. And with Jet in particular, I was actually unaware that he was still of junior age, just because he was a part of that 2% San Clemente group. And I do have to call out, like, a little bit of a walk back from maybe one of my predictions earlier in 2023 is obviously San Clemente is home to so much talent. We have lower trestles, you got a number of beach breaks, it has decades of world-class surfers coming out of that town. And they were, trying to brand themselves. I think at one point it was the San Clemente Cyclone and then, the 2% crew, et cetera, sort of as a response to the Brazilian Storm that's been so dominant at the elite level over the last few years. And I kind of didn't see it. I said, these are really good surfers. I don't know if the motivation's there, but between their real domination on the Challenger Series last year, qualifying en masse on both the men's and women's side, and then Jet adding his name to the World Juniors. That town has had a huge come up in the last 18 months, and it is really impressive. And Jet in particular is someone that seems like he has all the tools. Like even watching him on the Challenger Series last year, he's fast, he's progressive, he's got power, even if he is sort of a smaller framed guy. But he seems super driven, he seems super fit, and interestingly enough, just re-signed with the emerging brand Tenore. Pat Tenore has started a brand after leaving Ruka. Didn't take long for Tenore to get their first world title with Jet.
Well, that, and I also think that he was missing that extra little piece of motivation, Dave, given that his friends were able to do so well. And I really want to make something very clear. He was there until the very end when his best friends qualified for the CT in Saquarema too. The guy could have left, lost out kind of midway through the event right there at the last Challenger Series event. He stuck with them till the very end. And I think that was a big part of them also doing super well leading up into those final 2 days of competition where all of them qualified. Another thing that I feel that Jet hasn't surpassed yet, Dave, is that if you look at his results on the Challenger Series last year, third place finish to start off the year at Snapper Rocks, a place where goofy footers tend to really struggle. And the two places where I thought he was going to do best, Bolito and at the U.S. Open, he didn't really have his best results. Got a 9th place at the U.S. Open. I was expecting him to make it into finals day, maybe even be in the conversation for a champion right there. But I feel like this year could potentially be that one. It's all about consistency for him. And I also think it's a big attribute to the 7 different regions that we had worldwide to be able to push a lot of these young surfers, especially in their later years in the junior series, to get a first major victory like this one.
It's very cool. And I think that's a good thing you point out too, is for sure, globally, there's a ton of amateur junior events. There's the WSL's Pro Junior Series. Those are regional series. And then junior surfers 20 and under compete on those series to qualify for a spot at the World Junior Championships, which really lends itself to the prestige of the event, because these are not just the best junior surfers in your region. These are the best junior surfers on the planet. And to your point, for someone like Jet to come in, deliver, and perform under that kind of pressure, it bodes really well for his prospects throughout the year. Yeah. And on the women's side, it was the youngster, Sierra Kerr, who looked pretty undeniable on the broadcast. But what was it like in person watching her take on that international field?
It was even scarier, Dave. I mean, she was just lights out all event long, didn't lose a single heat, and came out with a real determination on the final against Zoe Benedetto, who was a very consistent surfer in the event. Somebody that was on the CS last year, Benedetto, she got a 3rd place finish in Edeseda, the second to last event on the CS schedule. And Sierra Kerr, just undeniably the best surfer throughout the entire event. I'd even say she would have probably beaten a lot of the men too. But 16 years of age, dominating the way she did, Dave. And I mean, she saved the very best for last too, went up into the 17-point category, which is already 2 excellent scores, but dropped a 9 underneath Zoe's priority too, which I think at a beach break like Oceanside can be very difficult to do, but that's just how good she was. And the judges really had to reward a lot of that progressive surfing that we saw on Rayo with the young surfer out of the Gold Coast.
Yeah, and I guess this is like, what's the thing going around on social media? Like, I'm old enough to remember when, and now that I'm starting my 19th year at the ASP WSL, I'm old enough to remember when I was in rookie orientation with Sarah's dad, Josh, on the CT in Australia years and years ago. And I think it's worth mentioning, Josh was an awesome free surfer, absolutely dominated the air show series in the late 90s and the early 2000s, but was an amazing tube rider and so talented. Qualified for the championship tour, not once, not twice, but 3 times, if I remember correctly. Made a ton of impact there. Has won big wave events in Todos Santos, was one of the founding members of the Red Bull Airborne series that went for a number of years. Still, to this day, seems like he's surfing better than he ever has. He surfs on the Album surfboards, Matt Parker, sort of alternative performance shapes, but looks incredible. And in addition to all of that, I think he's also a successful businessman and also just seems to be a hell of a parent. He's raised Sierra, and In addition to her being so dominant in Oceanside, she's got films coming out. She's world traveled. She's spent so much time in Indonesia and Australia and California. She charges. She can get barreled. She has to be one of the most exciting prospects coming out of junior women's surfing right now.
No doubt. No doubt. And you mentioned the word legacy too. That's what this whole event is about. And whether you're a second generation professional surfer like Sierra is to her father, Josh, look at the consistency that she's brought to in her first 2 years. She was only 15 when she competed last time at Seaside Reef, and it was huge. A lot of people didn't expect her to do that well on the back end, made it to the semifinals right there. Now wins the event right there in one of her adopted hometowns of San Diego too, which I think is superb when you look at the amount of pressure that she had to go through and a lot of people's expectations on her shoulders. But this event has provided major careers for a lot of people that have won, but also for the people that have just made it to finals day or being the runner-up. 2005, Kekova also beats Michelle Burez in the final. Jessie Miley Dyer, the first world junior champion on the women's side. Look at where she is right now. She's chief of sport for the company. And I also want to really recall what Bianca Buttendog was able to do in 2012. Made it all the way to the Olympics, got a silver medal there. She was the runner-up to Nikki Van Dijk in 2012. And even most recently, against Ethan Ewing, Griffin Colapinto made that final, and he finished number 3 on the championship tour. So this event right here, major for Sierra. It was a big introduction for a lot of the big world to really see what she's able to showcase in terms of her skills in the water. And just like her dad, Josh, she was able to surf within a criteria that doesn't necessarily guarantee to make her surf the best. If you look at Josh's best attributes, barrel rider, as you mentioned, loves hunting slabs, but his airs and his progression were really the thing that made him stand out. Sierra knows when to tone it down, but then when to elevate it again, Dave. And I feel like we saw that especially in the final with that 9-point ride that she had.
Big time. Well, congratulations to Jet and Sierra. Mitch, before we move on, any other field notes from you in terms of maybe surfers we haven't mentioned that maybe they didn't make the final, but they made an impact down there?
Yeah, Annette Gonzalez Etzavarri, one of the two sisters, the younger one, 16 years of age. She gets a 5th place finish here, loses a very close seed in the second to last day. Europe in real good hands. They had Sam Peter make it pretty far in the event. He lost to Jet Schilling. Great surfer coming out of France. He's only 20. Probably going to see him on the Challenger season. Leo Casal, he was on the CS last year. He got 3rd at this event. Major props to him. He surfed great. And I also really, really want to thank the performances that we saw from Levi Slauson and Joel Vaughn. Wow, that was just amazing stuff that we saw from Joel Vaughn. He went ballistic in one heat. We saw a 9.1, we saw a 9.43, and he was thrown away an 8.17 for a major single turn, which is not normally something that you're going to see at a major event like this. Getting an 8 for just one turn, speed, power, flow was included. This kid's the real deal. We're going to see him on the CS again this year.
Such a good point too, and I think that one of maybe the intangible benefits of maybe not getting a result at an event like the World Junior Championships, but performing in that fashion is that you have CS and CT judges. That's the caliber of judges that are there at the World Junior Championships because it is such an important event. Not only are they getting the benefit of understanding that you are capable of achieving excellent scoring rides, you as a young surfer know that you can do that in front of that kind of a panel, and that carries, right? That carries, and it gives you that kind of confidence when you move up to the next level, when you move up to the level after that where you're going, I'm not just hanging on. I can thrive here. And even if I didn't get the result I wanted, I know I can surf at a level where that result's going to come.
100%. And to another note too, Dave, when you started at the ASP, now the World Surf League, there weren't a lot of major broadcasts for these events. Now they actually have the virtue of having a broadcast for their event, getting more eyes on them, people getting recognition. And next thing you know, a lot of the surfers that you saw at your favorite smaller event are making it to the championship tour. And I feel like that's the whole purpose of this, giving them an opportunity, get some more eyeballs on them, and then they're going to make it to the big step afterwards.
Awesome. Well, congratulations once again to all the World Junior Championship qualified surfers. That's a huge achievement in and of itself, but special congrats to Sierra Kerr and Jet Schilling, our newly minted WSL World Junior Championships. Thanks again to Sam Bazan and Best Western, as well as the community at San Diego in Oceanside for hosting us. We're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right, we are back. This is the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Prodan here with Mitchell Salazar. And as we teed up at the very beginning of this episode, the window for the 2024 Lexus Pipe Pro presented by YETI opens on January 9th. So it's time to talk about the 2024 season, and in particular, the second season of the Vissla CT Shaper Rankings. So it's in its sophomore year. We had our first year last year. It was pretty awesome. It's pretty fun to talk about with you, Mitch, on the podcast. For listeners who have not heard about this or who need a little bit of a refresher, we are doing a Shaper Rankings with Vissla support this year again. And the Shaper Rankings is a combined men's and women's ranking that counts all the results, quarterfinals or better, and allocates those results to whoever's board that surfer was surfing on to get that result. And then we do a ranking for every event, and then we do a ranking at the end of the year. At the end of the year, the number one program is awarded the Vissla CT Shaper of the Year award. And last year, that program was gifted an overnight stay and surf at Surf Ranch Lemoore. I'm pleased to announce that that is the case again this year. So there's more than just bragging rights on the line. But Mitch, where we left off in 2023, we determined the winner following the completion of the regular championship tour season in Tahiti. It was Matt Biolos at Lost Surfboards. And then we had the finals, and pretty interesting in how the results at the finals for the surfers and the boards that they were riding really mirrored those top five that finished the regular season.
Truly did, Dave. And if you look at what Matt Biolos was able to do just right there at home in San Clemente, he had the number 1 and 2 in the world on the women's side. He had number 3 in the world in Griffin Colapinto on the men's side. And then Sharp Eye just right behind them again in second place. They had the men's world champion in Felipe Toledo, and they had a 5th place finisher in Jack Robinson. Big props to DHD. And he was definitely one of the people that were more invested into this program. Darren Hanley, he ended up in 3rd place, and kind of the same situation at the finals. He had the runner-up to the World Championship in Ethan Ewing, who, by the way, might be one of the favorites to win the World Championship this year, and also 5th place with Molly Picklum in that event. Paisel had 1 surfer, number 3 in the world, Tyler Wright. Joao Shianka, number 4 in the world with Channel Islands, and of course, a very respectable finish at the Rip Curl WSL Finals also for Caitlin Simmers and Chris Borson. We talk about those kind of smaller shapers and the underrated ones. We got a couple on tour this year again. Chris Borst with Caitlin Simmers. Also got to give a big shout out to Johnny Cabianca and the 3-time world champion Gay Medina, who is coming out with a vengeance this year in 24.
It's a great point. And we work with these shaping programs both on how we're doing the rankings in season and also if we're going to update anything after the season. After the Rip Curl WSL Finals concluded last year, we had a ton of feedback from the global community of shapers that participate in this and asked, hey, well, should we update this? Should we update that? And the consensus was, no, everything felt pretty good. It felt like a pretty accurate reflection of which board builders the world's best surfers were electing to ride. And then beyond that, which of the world's best surfers were actually performing on those boards. So heading into 2024, same rules as last year. It's going to be a combined men's and women's ranking. We're going to be counting quarterfinals or better results, and we're going to be running it from CT1 at Pipeline through CT9 in Fiji, determining the 2024 Vissla CT Shaper of the Year following the conclusion of the Fijian event. There are some pretty big shakeups, though, between last year and this year, just in terms of how the teams lined up. And we had a couple of signings and acquisitions that balanced things out, but also we had the Challenger Series class qualify in Saquarema. And Mitch, just looking at the CS class qualifiers, how does that break down amongst the board builders on tour, and who really benefits from getting a little bit more talent added to their roster ahead of the 2024 CT season?
Well, I think Channel Lions is going to have a big boost. Baron Mamiya signing with them is obviously huge. I think the addition of Alyssa Spencer, a true freshman on the women's tour, is going to be major for them too. Dave, we've been talking about it for years now, and Jason Stevenson, who was probably at the top of the pinnacle of board building for years with Andy, Bruce, Joel, you name it, even Aki was on his team. Not to say that he had a major downfall, but he wasn't really even recognized as one of those top dogs anymore. He got a major signing during the offseason this year. And Miguel Pupo, number 6 in the world in 22, opens up a major market for him in Brazil. And I think that is a huge addition to the Vissla CT Shaper rankings, given they still don't have a ton of surfers. I mean, just going through to the men's side, they only have 2 with Ryan Callanan and Miggy. Don't know what the situation is yet with Sam, his younger brother. But on the women's side, I mean, they got a couple of great surfers too. And I feel like if you look at what most of them are able to do, especially in the first 5 events, I would think that they're going to garner enough points to make a top 10, maybe even a top 5 run in the Vissla CT Shaper rankings at the end of 24.
It'll be really interesting. I'm glad you brought up team size because, as we said last year, we're really excited about the Vissla CT Shaper rankings because it's an opportunity to celebrate every single shaper that supports the CT surfers. But we're also not pretending it's an apples to apples situation here. There really are kind of 3 distinct tiers when you look at the program sizes. And a better apples to apples comparison in 2024 is to look at, Lost versus DHD versus Sharp Eye, where it's, 11 Lost team riders, 8 DHD team riders, and 8 Sharp Eyes riders. As opposed to something like, Lost versus Timmy Patterson. Right now, Timmy Patterson has 2019 world champion Italo Ferreira on the team, and that's it. And that works for that program, and that's awesome. But it's a little bit unfair to be like, Lost is beating the crap out of Patterson. That's not exactly true. But the reason I like our formula, and I think the reason that the shaping community supports the way we ran it last year, is because that quarterfinals or better ruling makes it not a participation trophy. You still have to turn up and perform, and those are results of impact. But at the same time, I like that we are avoiding the idea of limiting the number of surfers for each program. Like if we've done it's your 2 best surfers, because by not doing that, that still includes the agency of the world's best surfers to choose who they ride for.
Exactly.
And I think that's a big deal. These surfers can surf for pretty much any board company, and they're electing to go to these certain programs because it fits them best. And I like that that's reflected in the rankings as well. Because it's a combined ranking, we saw something last year in Sharp Eye that probably started the season in the driver's seat. They had a huge team, and they performed throughout the year. They had an amazing run, specifically on the men's side. Unfortunately for them, Joanne DeFay was injured earlier in the year, so she didn't participate. She's a pretty consistent performer. And then Tatiana Weston Webb had, for her, what could be considered a bit of a down year, right?
Yep.
And so I think having Joanne back and hopefully having a bounce back year from Tatiana will balance it out for them. But it's been interesting seeing some of the moving pieces in between last year and this year. Has there been anything else that you've noticed on the board building programs?
Mayhem, we talked about, and I'm glad that you brought that topic up, because they're electing to ride these boards. It's not like somebody's forcing them, or next thing you know, it's like throwing a ton of cash. No, it's like, dude, in board building, when you sign a deal with a shaper, for the most part, you're just getting free boards. That's it. You're either on a traded program, and then people are like, oh, why am I not on the team? Dude, a lot of surfers on the CT and the Challenger Series alike still pay partially for their boards. So it's not like everybody's getting them for free. But I want to point out that Mayhem, they made a huge addition with all the kids from the U.S. qualifying. Matson, Auschmund, Hanneman back on tour. Imai Kalani DeVault is going to bring some major points for Channel Islands. But same thing, Dave. They need to make it after the cut to really be able to give their team those valuable points. On the women's side, I think both Joanne and Tati have a lot of catching up to do. But despite the injuries from Joanne DeFay, she still finished even higher in the rankings than Tati Weston Webb. She was 7th in comparison to the 9th, which is kind of crazy given that Tati was runner-up to the World Championship just a few years ago. I feel like both of them should have a major bounce-back year. And if you look at the way that Joanne DeFay competes, I feel like she's one of the bigger threats over at the Hawaiian Lake, both at the Lexus Pike Pro and at Sunset Beach.
Totally agree with you. So we're going to put ourselves on the spot here before the season starts. As I said, there's probably 3 major tiers when you're looking at the way the team programs are built out now. If you're looking at this list right now, Mitch, who do you think is going to be the 2024 Vissla CT Shaper of the Year?
It's hard for me to go against Matt Biolis and Mayhem again. I went through the list again. JS, they got Fred, they got both Pupo brothers, they got Ryan Callanan. That's a strong team, and we always talk about how good Ryan Callanan and that he really
Mm-hmm.
hasn't risen to that occasion where you feel like he's a top 5 surfer. I think they're a sneaker. I think they're going to be in the top 5 at the end of the year. I still put Mayhem over both Sharp Eye and Channel Islands just because of the depth. And I think people are going to be really amazed given what those kids are going to do in the first few events. I think Cole Houshman is going to have a great year. To me, he's the rookie of the year in 24. I think Eli Hanneman is an underrated surfer just due to his size. And I also think that Cade Matson should have a breakthrough one. But don't forget about Crosby Colapinto. Kid has grown up on the CT, traveling with his brother. I think the first 2 events over in Hawaii are 2 great events for him.
It's a great pick, and it's hard to deny it. Like, I think what we said in the first segment of the podcast, that San Clemente group and that 2% group, many of whom ride Lost Surfboards, also out of San Clemente, yep. That really benefited their numbers heading into the 2024 season. And also just the function of us having these rankings. Like, it doesn't shock me that they've got the lion's share of the talent on their program to start the season, because that program performed so well last year. But I guess just to be a devil's advocate on it, I really like the way the DHD team looks. You've got Molly Picklum, who was lights out last year. You've got Stephanie Gilmore, who's an 8-time world champion. You got Ethan Ewing, who finished runner-up and has kind of established himself as the surfer's surfer. Great title threat this year. And then you've got these performers in, Connor O'Leary, Liam O'Brien, Callum Robson, all of whom have proven they can get results at the elite level. You've got Isabella Nichols coming back. She's gotten results at the CT level. And then the true rookie, Jacob Wilcox, out of Western Australia. It's a pretty exciting team, and I can see them doing a lot of damage starting in Hawaii.
So here's my debate with you, and I actually think it was a great pick on your behalf. I just looked through the list again. I like that team a lot. But let me go through the women, because I think that's really where we saw last year that Mayhem was able to break away, Dave. Sawyer Lindblad, a true freshman on the CT, did great, won a CS event last year at the US Open, was undeniably one of the best surfers throughout the entire year. Caroline Marks, defending world champion. Carissa Moore, runner-up to the world championship last year. Gabby Bryan, she's finished in the top 10 every single year. Now, deviate towards DHD. Molly Picklum, top 5 surfer. Steph Gilmore, maybe the greatest surfer of all time on the women's side. And then you also have the one wild card, Isabella Nichols. How do they compare to each other? How do they rate against each other? That, to me, is where these shapers are going to win the rankings once again.
It's a lot of fun. Congratulations once again to Matt Biolis and Lost Surfboards out of San Clemente for claiming the 2023 CT Shaper of the Year title. It's going to be really exciting to see how things shake up in Hawaii. And also, which was a big storyline last year, while we have a directional idea of who is on these teams to start the year, things are always changing. And even in Hawaii, you may see people pulling out Arakawas, Pangs, Takoros to suit those conditions. And in the event that they get a result on those boards, those are the shapers that get those results. Yep. So it's going to be really exciting at the upcoming Lexus Pipe Pro presented by YETI. And thank you again to Vissla for supporting the CT Shaper rankings, and good luck to all the global board builders out there. We'll see how it goes this year. We're going to take one more quick break, and we will be right back.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the Lineup Podcast. I'm your part-time co-host, Mitchell Salazar, and that is the one and only Dave Proda. And Dave, we got our listener question segment coming up. Once again, thanks to everybody writing to @TheLineupPod. And remember, if we don't get to your question today, we'll try our best to get it on our next episode. We do always respond in the DMs, though, so send us your questions. And let's start off with our first one for today's episode, Dave. @Dave Cromo. How does this current breed of juniors differ from their junior counterparts a decade ago? So, 2013 we'd say, because this year was the crowning of the 2023 World Junior Champions?
Right. Yeah, it's a good question. I'd be more interested in your notes, Mitch, since you probably saw a lot more of it in and around the event as well. I mean, 10 years ago, I'll back up. I mean, for a good chunk of time, I think it was almost 10 years in the late 90s, early 2000s. This event was same time of year. It was in January. It was the first week of the year, and it was at North Narrabeen in New South Wales in Australia. And it was really consistent. So super high performance wave. We've had it on the CT. We've had it on the CS. Super fun. And I think the similarity is the prestige. If you take a look at those names that won it, like Andy Irons, Joel Parkinson, Pedro Henrique, Adriano de Souza, Kekoa Bacalso, Jesse Miley Dyer, in those first 10 years, again, they all went on to make a real impact at the elite level of surfing, both inside and outside of competition. And I think that really carried, even though the venue is switching up. We went from having, multiple World Junior Championship events. Karamas was on there at one point. Burley Heads was on there at one point. We were in Taiwan at one point. And in 2013, someone named Gabriel Medina won it, a year before he won the actual title. And Gabe is someone who came onto the CT, qualified for the CT at the mid-year rotation during the 2011 year. He immediately won 3 out of the first 5 events on tour, which is insane. And so he was still on tour. And I think what you said before about a lot of the World Junior Championship surfers at this year's event were on the CS last year, especially the ones that were dominant. And I think there is something to that. I think the surfers that perform in this event, they have that experience at the upper levels, whether it's the Challenger Series level or in some cases the Championship Tour level. And I think what that gives them is, even on the broadcast, there is such an element of speed and power that doesn't always translate to the broadcast as it is in real life, right? And I think when you go up a level in any sport, that's always the thing you hear, right? Like number 1 drafted, NCAA quarterback ends up in the NFL, and the only comment is the speed's too fast. The speed of the game is too fast. I haven't got the speed of my game up. And I think that applies in almost any sport, absolutely in surfing. So I think a lot of those surfers, the similarity is they have that experience at the, in some cases, the most upper level of competition. And when they come back down to their own level with their own peers, they're just that much stronger. As far as differences go, I just think surfers today, they're considerably more motivated, right? Sponsorship is probably not as easy as it is to get in 2024 as it was 10 years ago. They understand how important these events are. They understand the platform that these events provide them. They understand what that means to their own careers and their own opportunities. And I just think they're incredibly well-rounded. I don't think there's a ton of specialists that can come in and perform at the World Junior Championships. I think they're very good in the tube. I think they're very good in the air. I think they're very good technically, and I think they kind of have to be if they're gonna have that achievement on their record as well. But Mitch, you were down there. What have you noticed with this current crop of juniors that feels different to past generations?
Well, first things first. 2013. That's my generation right there. 6 months younger than Gabe. I competed in the same events as all those guys. Ramsey Bukiam was the runner-up in 2013 to Gabe. And I feel like this, I said it on the broadcast many times, this was always my favorite event to watch growing up. I started surfing in 2007. The next year, Kai Barger wins the World Junior Championship over Jadson Andre, who's had a long and really historic career on the CT. Tanner Gadowski.
Quick note on Kai Barger, though. Quick note on Kai Barger and Keikoa Bacalso were not actually officially qualified for the Hawaii region entering into the World Junior Championships. They both got in because one of the surfers that was supposed to go from their region got hurt.
Wow.
So for all the young surfers out there that feel bummed they maybe missed out or maybe don't feel like they're up to it, both Kai and Keikoa got into the event, and winning that event, it changed their whole career. It's awome. Sorry to interrupt.
No, the ASP days, Dave. ASPs.
It's the only window of time I can remember.
No, but I think it's such a good point you bring up, because you don't necessarily have to win your region. You don't necessarily have to be somebody that qualified through the juniors. Dude, Zoe Benedetto has barely done any junior events before. She was runner up at the event because she's still under the age limit, still has actually 2 full years on the junior tour if she would decide to pursue that. But that's one thing that I've seen a lot more than we did 10, 15 years ago. We're seeing a lot more younger surfers tackle both the QS and the Challenger Series at a younger age. And I'm so happy that we brought the age back up to 20 rather than 18 than it was a few years ago in the junior series. You're not fully mature yet when you're just 17, 18. You don't try to qualify for the CT knowing that, hey, I'm Caitlin Simmers. I won a CS event. Great. You won it in Huntington Beach, a place you've competed at before. She knew that she had to delay that process of qualifying another year. She also denied the opportunity to compete at both events last year and at this one because she's still within the age group to compete in the junior series. She's already made it to the CT. She's finished within the top 5. And that to me is the biggest difference, is experience. We're seeing a lot younger surfers compete at a higher level than we did 10 or 15 years ago. Case in point, Jet Schilling, he's been on the Challenger Series several years now. He was your world junior champion. Sierra Kerr, 16 years of age. We're going to see her make it to the CT and win at least one world championship on the women's side.
It's a great point. It really is. And yeah, it's exciting. It was an exciting event. I can't wait to see what those kids do, moving through the system.
By the way, thanks San Diego. Hosted us twice, 2 years in a row. Really appreciate you guys, City of Oceanside, and of course, Seaside Reef the year before. Our second question, Dave, from @Andrews. The A is with a 4. What do you think about adding one leg of cold water surfing to the tour? Norway, Iceland, or etc.? Good question. I like it.
That is a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question because I think it lets us kind of talk about the intent of the championship tour, actual, like the calendar design, for sure. Like our business is, it's a platform for the world's best surfing. And we're fortunate that we've been able to, steward this platform in a way where we're annually determining the world champions. And we've been doing so for almost 5 decades. It'll be 50 years in a couple of years, 76 being the first year for the organization. And I think with the CT, the designing it to have comprehensively the best performance surfers on the planet, getting the results and competing for a world title, it's one thing to be like, oh, they all need to be, 10 events in Chopu, right? Like that might entertain some people, it might entertain us, but it doesn't give you a comprehensive look at who the best performers on the planet are. They want to have wave diversity. They want to have rights. They want to have lefts. They want to have beach breaks. They want to have reef breaks. They want to have point breaks. Knowing that not all beach breaks are created equal. There are world-class beach breaks and there are, more civilian beach breaks that you and I probably surf every day, right? But the same with water temp, it shouldn't necessarily be all board shorts and bikinis. Like you should have to put some full suits on. You should have to try different challenges and see how you can compete and how you can perform on this platform in a variety of conditions. So I really like the idea. We do have a couple of colder water events, right? If you look at, Peniche, Bells, Margaret River on occasion, Jeffreys Bay. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, having a really cold water spot like Norway or Iceland like that is intriguing. I think you'd want, number one, the waves to be at a quality that is worthy of the CT. And also reliable and consistent in the way that we can kind of plan it out. And then the second part is just, are there partners that want to invest in that kind of an event? And is there operational infrastructure where we can bring it to the world, right? I like the idea, but it also reminds me like years ago when a lot of endemic brands were trying to sponsor events, in the sunshine or the warmer water. And O'Neill as a brand were like, well, we make wetsuits, so we're going to do the O'Neill Cold Water Classic Series. And they had a number of high-level QS events at Steamer Lane in Santa Cruz, which is sort of their home base and is an iconic event. But I remember like Tasmania, Scotland, Cape Town. I really thought that concept was awesome. I really enjoyed all those events. I love loved watching, this upcoming generation of surfers like battle it out in colder waves, because for a lot of us around the world, we surf cold waves. So it's nice to kind of see that. But you competed, Mitch. What do you think about, competing in cold water, coming from Mexico yourself, and then also the idea of competing in maybe really cold water with like hoods and gloves and booties?
Oh, there's a difference, and trust me, I know. In the summertime where I'm from is as tropical as it could get. Very humid, so you go from one extreme temperature to another. I remember competing at the lane in November, and usually October, November, it's the change of the season right there. So it's either very beautiful or it can be extremely cold. And I had a couple of occasions where I had to compete at Steamer Lane where it was freezing. And I think you're spot on when it comes to having diversity on tour. We obviously have Bells and J-Bay, I would say, are the two coldest locations. Margaret River's cold, but the water temperature isn't horrible. I think logistically, in terms of venues, there's two major possibilities, and two of them were actually stops on that O'Neill Coldwater Classic tour, late 2000s, early 2010s. One of them is Tofino, Canada. I've been there. Very consistent wave right there at Cox Bay. You have the option right there for a beach break that is world class. It's great. Has different kinds of swells and sections on offer, and the beach is huge. So you can definitely have an event right there. Second one, and to me, I think it would be my preference, would be Thurston, Scotland. Great wave. The only bad thing about it is that it can be a little fickle. So it could be a little bit harder to actually predict a swell and get the event going there. But look, in terms of legacy history, the trophies are awesome. You're going to a place that is very well known for heavy, bigger slabs. And I think most importantly, just to be able to get a breath of fresh air on the championship tour, get a right-hander that when it's pumping is a barreling wave too. I don't know about you, Dave. I'd love to go to Scotland to have a CT event there.
Yeah, I think they'd welcome, at a minimum, they'd welcome you and I in the lineup. We'd fit right in. So
could happen. Could happen. Let's see. And our third question, Dave, and it comes from an esteemed colleague at Dreadbot, Andrew Nichols, a media manager for the WSL North America Tour, somebody that I've known for years, a great human being, awesome journalist, and he's been really through the thick and thin when it comes to seeing a lot of these young surfers qualify throughout this region here in North America. His question, who's going to be the biggest rookie surprise?
Biggest rookie surprise. So it's not like a who's the rookie of the year question. Surprise is like, who does everyone expect to do well, or it doesn't expect to do well and does. So if you look at the true rookie class for 2024, unless I'm missing someone, I think we've got 5 men: Cole Hauschman, Crosby Colapinto, Eli Hanneman, Cade Matson, and Jacob Wilcox. 2 women: Sawyer Lindblad and Alyssa Spencer.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at the men, right? So Cole won the CS last year. Big, strong, goofy footer from San Clemente. It's probably not a huge surprise if he does well on tour. Crosby's had quite a lot of exposure just because of his brother. I don't think that's a huge surprise. Eli has been in the spotlight for years. Cade's probably out of that group, the more underground person. But I think on the men's side, this is my pick for rookie of the year too, is Jacob Wilcox. I think that if you were in Australia, this isn't so much a surprise, but I think outside of Australia, and particularly outside of Western Australia, he's not as well known, but he's a long-time Rip Curl team rider. He's a long-time DHD team rider. He's someone who I think is performed out at Pipeline. He's charged out in Western Australia. He's got a great rail game. He's an excellent tube rider. And I think he could just do it all. So I think Jacob's going to make a name for himself, and it wouldn't shock me if he started right away in Hawaii. And then, on the women's side, Sawyer and Alyssa, it's a difficult question. I've seen them both surf so well. So I don't know if either one of them would be a surprise, but they're both so young. So it might just be one of those things that if they are performing and getting results, it'll be really impressive just because they are younger. I don't know. What do you think, Mitch? You're pretty close to this crop of rookies.
It's tough because I was actually going to go Wilcox on the men's side too. I honestly think he qualified at the right time too. He's been so close for a number of years now. But in terms of his age, in his mid-20s now, your body fully develops, you're understanding your body and your equipment a lot more. You've been traveling around the world with a lot more maturity than you had in your late teens, early 20s. And I think most importantly, he's gotten to know a lot of the venues that he will be competing at because he's been a wild card over 10 times on the CT. Portugal,
Right.
Bells, Margaret River, 3 locations that can be very difficult, especially Bells Beach. And then you mentioned him being from West Oz. The kid charges. I mean, I'm not gonna be surprised to see him really pack a couple of big closeouts if he needs to at pipe. And at Sunset Beach, watch out. That backhand that he has is just deadly. So kind of the one guy that's always flying under the radar. He just hasn't had like that one major win. And I think that's why a lot of people still don't get his name to be the one all the way at the pinnacle at the very top. Matson, kind of the underrated guy when it comes to that crew. I feel like he should also have a breakout. I still feel like the guy to watch is Cole, though. Has a lot to prove, doesn't want to be known as a fluke. And on the women's side,
right,
that's a toss-up between the two. Very evenly skilled. Sawyer, a few years younger than Alyssa. They both grew up through the same rankings and the same amateur programs. I think when it comes to ferocity, I'd probably go Sawyer. When it comes to consistency and being level-headed, I'd probably give the edge to Alyssa. So I think to me, patience goes a long way. I'm going to go with Alyssa Spencer with the bigger rookie surprise on the women's side.
It's a good breakdown. I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you brought up the wild card, CT wild card experience for Jacob as well, because you're right. Like, and I think similar to what we were saying with the World Juniors, like any experience that you have at the level you're heading into is such an advantage. And in addition to all of his talents and his sort of performance bona fides, like he really strikes me as someone that Rip Curl modeled a little bit after Owen Wright. Like he's a few years older, but same program with him, like preternaturally talented goofy footer, good in all conditions, gave him a lot of opportunities as a CT wildcard before he qualified. And then once he qualified, we all saw what kind of damage he did there. He was incredible and kind of a perennial, not only event threat, but title contender. So I think that goes a long way with Wilcox as well. It'll be exciting.
Yeah. I'm excited for this year. Imai's back. You got Eli qualifying,
back,
which
right.
Everybody thought was going to happen. You have all the San Clemente kids, the women, Sawyer, Alyssa. And there's people that have something to prove, too. John, he wants to win. I know he's been very vocal about not wanting the finals at lower trestles. Guess what? You got to go through the big dogs, and the only way that I feel like he has the best chance of winning is he's the number 1 seed. Leo, who had an incredible year in 2023. Jack Robinson had his first kid. He really has a lot more extra motivation on his plate. And let's not forget about our favorite goofy footer on tour right now, Yago Dora. Won his first CT event. I feel like he's going to be a top 5 surfer at the end of the year, too.
That's such a good point. We've got 2-time world champion Felipe Toledo. You've got Caroline Marks. You've got Carissa Moore, Tyler Wright. You've got John. You've got Gabe. So even while we're getting excited about the incoming rookie class or some of these younger faces coming up through the system, we're also in a place where we have a ton of elite level talent, a ton of world champions who maybe weren't even in the finals last year. So I do think we just have this awesome concentration of talent, and I think we're going to be in for a show in 2024. So it's really exciting. Mitch, I'm so glad you're back on the lineup. So fun to hang and talk surfing. And yeah, man, look forward to doing it real soon. Thanks to everyone who wrote in questions at the Lineup Pod on Instagram. If we didn't get to yours, we will try to do it on DM. If we don't get to it, please remind us. We do try to answer everybody. But yeah, everyone get your fantasy teams locked in for the year. Get your calendar set, because the world's best surfers will be back very, very soon for the opening stop of the season, the Lexus Pipe Pro presented by YETI. Mitch, we will be talking really soon.
Yeah, Dave. You.